Good Sunday morning. I'm Don Kerrigan for News Center, Maine. With this week's Political Brew, we're coming to you remotely this morning, joined by Republican analyst Ray Richardson, Democratic analyst Ken Altshuler. Thank you guys both for being with us. Been quite an eventful week in Maine and nationally. Let's start with some Maine issues. One that just got put to bed basically Friday night, this question of the $850 relief checks that were sent out by the legislature and the governor last year. And there was a big question that popped up whether those would be taxed. Now the IRS has said it won't have to be taxed as income. But Ken, I'll start with you. Is this a question that should ever have been there in the first place?
Well, I think the communication was bad. Clearly, I thought it was not going to be taxable. 21 other states have the same kind of I'm going to call it a giveaway just to make Ray happy this morning. And if you look at the regs, it's got to be based on need, and it's got to be in times of a crisis. That met that definition. It was not going to be taxable, but the communication was bad. The implication was that they had checked this out with somebody, be it the IRS, which won't give you an advisory opinion, or somebody who's a tax expert. And when you communicated that, oh yeah, it's not going to be taxable, as if you know that's the answer, that's just bad communication. I think you can say, look, we believe it's not going to be taxable. We should put that caveat in here, but we're pretty confident. Bad communication, but much ado about nothing.
Yeah. Ray, a crisis that was unnecessary?
Oh, absolutely. I'm grateful that the IRS has seen it the way the state saw it. Many low-income Mainers would have had to maybe refile their returns or be taxed on this, what they thought was relief checks. But look, let's be honest here. This was incompetence. There's something called due diligence. Governor Mills was a district attorney for a long time. The attorney general, she's a lawyer. She knew better. You do your due diligence. And if she doesn't have the IRS's number, Assistant Secretary Monica Crowley's a buddy at the Treasury Department. I can help her out if she needs it.
There you go. Maybe she'll reach out to you for that. Other issues not yet settled. Democrats and activists this week had a big push for paid family leave. We're still waiting to see some of the specifics of the proposal. But Ray, I'll start with you. Is this something that Maine ought to get into?
No, absolutely not. Look, depending on the survey you look at, we're either 47th worst business climate or 50th worst business climate. Wow, I can't talk this morning. And we don't need to be heaping more burdens on Maine businesses. Look, I am sympathetic to employees who need time away, but that should be something the employer and the employee agrees to, not something the government mandates with another tax on payroll. And I do hope the state chamber will stand strong on this. They seem a little wishy-washy because they're operating in a culture of fear about a referendum. The truth is, fight the fight in front of them. And if a referendum comes, we'll fight that fight. But this is very bad for the state of Maine. This is an employee and an employer issue, and the government needs to get out of the way.
Okay. Ken, do you agree with that? Do you see it differently?
Well, I actually agree with Ray on this. First, I fear referendums anyway, which is why we should eliminate them from the state of Maine. That being said, I believe in helping people, but I think it should be a proven need before you do it. And a blanket, you get this much time off, not everybody needs it. But if it's available to you and you can get it for free, who's not going to do it? So I think it is between the employer and the employee. I think it's an incentive to work for somebody. We certainly have plenty of job opportunities in the state of Maine. It would be an incentive to hire somebody. I don't believe government should be coming in and making employers do things because it feels good to do it. I'm just not that's not part of my fiscal responsibility. I agree with Ray on this, and I think it's really a contract issue, not a government issue.
Another issue that the legislature is going to have to deal with is coming from the Republican side. Once again, people wanting Maine to enact voter ID. In the past, that's been pretty much a party line issue and appears that it would be that way again. Ken, what do you think? Do you think Maine needs voter ID?
You know, I used to be not necessarily a proponent or an anti-proponent. I really was fairly neutral. But I've looked at some of the statistics. There's been 2 cases of fraud where somebody has voted twice in the history of the state of Maine. This is a solution without a problem. And I blame Donald J. Trump for this incredible fear that the election's fraudulent. Our elections are not fraudulent. It's very rare. And he has created now a culture of fear where we think that somehow we're being cheated at the ballot box. Now, I don't think it's a big deal to show an ID, but it is somewhat disadvantageous to people who have more trouble forgetting to bring ID in, transgenders who don't necessarily have ID cards with the correct name on it. And studies have shown that the negative reasons, such as the expense, the delay, outweighs the positive benefits. So I'm a no on this, although I don't think it's a critical issue that's going to ruin any of our lives.
And Ray, I know that you support voter ID.
I have long, before Donald Trump was around, I supported voter ID. I've long thought if you've got to show it to buy a drink or to open a bank account, this is the most sacred thing we do as Americans. The vote is our voice. And I used the example on my show the other day. If a police officer pulls you over, you don't have your license with you, but you tell him you have one, why wouldn't that be good enough? Or, you know, if you need insurance or registration, officer, I have it, but I don't have it with me. That's good enough, isn't it? I mean, that's the same thing they're saying here. There's no harm in doing this. There was an academic study that came out this past week. The Wall Street Journal highlighted it, I think, on Wednesday. And it said that there is no detriment, there is no victimhood here to minorities over photo ID. This is a good safeguard, and I've long supported it before Donald Trump existed.
Mm-hmm. And New Hampshire does it.
Yes, of course, and they do it very successfully. It's a good model. Instead of trying to do what California does, a state that's $22 billion in the hole this year, let's look at New Hampshire, which has the lowest poverty in the country and is a very well-run state. Why don't we stop adopting their ideas if we're going to adopt ideas?
But not because they don't have voter ID. That's not why. I mean,
no. But I'm just saying we're always going some cockamamie idea out of California. Let's look at what New Hampshire's doing. They're doing it pretty well right now.
That's just a different environment than us, but I certainly think we could take some lessons from them. Voter ID is just not a necessity. That's really my view.
All right. And one final question on state issues. Republicans in the Senate are raising the suggestion that the expansion of MaineCare, Medicaid in the state, which was passed by voters and then put into place 4 years ago, has contributed to the workforce problem, and would like to see some legislation related to that. Ken, first of all, what's your take on that suggestion?
Well, so Ray's going to really love this, and I'm going to lose all my liberal credentials on this. I have no issue about making people work or apply for jobs before they get welfare. And one of the problems is that, as you've heard, people will make appointments, not show up for interviews, and there's no real follow through to see if they actually apply for jobs. So I agree with the theory that if you get something for free, you should contribute something back. Now, I'm not sure that the reason for this is MaineCare, and I think that there is some small correlation, but I don't think that's the issue.
And MaineCare is not money into somebody's pocket. So.
Correct. Absolutely right. But they're saying because MaineCare is available to more people, that there's less people in the workforce. And I'm not sure I agree with that correlation. I think there's a lot of reasons why we don't have enough people in the workforce. Okay. But if you get something from the state, you should give something back. I think that's only fair. And I tend to agree with the Republicans on that.
Okay. Ray.
So just very simple. When Governor Mills took office, there were 701,000 people in the available workforce. Today, there's 678,000 people in the available workforce, even though during that 4 years, 60,000 new people moved here. Now, they weren't all work eligible, but right now we have a workforce participation rate in the state of Maine of 57.9%. It's the lowest in recorded history. Governor Mills put 100,000 people on MaineCare. You're right, it's not money in their pocket, but is an open door to other social programs. And 82,000 of those people were childless adults. This does have an impact. It should be studied to show the correlation between more welfare, less available workforce. I think they're onto something.
Let's talk about some national issues. And we've got to start with this Chinese spy balloon. Ray, I'll start with you. Obviously, particularly on the Republican side, everybody's saying that the Biden administration and the military blew it by not shooting this down much earlier. Military folks said that it didn't pose a threat. We still are waiting to find out more details. Do you think the administration failed on this?
Well, I think they've got to answer some questions, Don. First of all, there are reports from credible media sources that they were tracking this balloon for almost a month. It came in through the Aleutian Islands, which are very sparsely populated. They could have shot it down then if it was worthy of being shot down. But they let it traipse across the country, across our northern border, across nuclear installations, and then it came out in South Carolina and they shot it down in the Atlantic. So whatever the Chinese were hoping to get out of it, they got it. It was transmitted back, and then we shot it down. If we were going to shoot it down, we should have shot it down before it crossed our country. As you know, there's another object they shot down on Friday. This time they shot it down before it went across the country. We don't know exactly all the details yet, but the truth of the matter is it seems they hesitated when they should have acted.
Okay. Ken, what's your take?
So my first criticism is that the Republicans immediately went to town on attacking Joe Biden. And we're in now a culture, and it's not just Republicans, where we attack the person in power just because we can. And I think that's where we've gotten with Congress today. I think that's where we're getting with politics today. It's a shame. I think Joe Biden did exactly what he should do. He followed the advice of the military. Now, was the military correct to not shoot it down beforehand? I'm not sure I buy it took a month and they were tracing it for a month. It went across the country in a week. So where did it start from to take a month to get across the ocean? So it was huge. It could have caused some damages. And can you imagine what the Republicans would be saying today if one person got hurt by this thing being shot out of the sky? They would have been howling at what an irresponsible president we have. So first of all, let's think about this responsibly. Do we? And by the way, they've also said that this happened 2 or 3 times during the Trump administration.
Right. Let me toss a question in here.
Sure.
Do we think there's a chance that, or even a likelihood that the military and intelligence folks knew a whole lot more about this than they were letting on?
And didn't tell the president about it.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely correct. I think that's likely. And by the way, and what I was saying about Donald Trump and other ones, and I don't blame Donald Trump for this. We've had balloons do this before. I don't think Donald Trump knew about that. And so I think the military is not really communicating what they should be communicating about this. And I don't know why. I think we need to look into this. But to blame Joe Biden, I think is silly. And by the way, shooting the one yesterday, I think that was a reaction to not shooting down the Chinese balloon, which I think is a mistake on Joe Biden's part.
Yeah. And we still don't know what that is or was.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
The other big event of the week, somewhat shaded, overshadowed by the balloon flying over, is the State of the Union address by the president, and catcalls from Republicans, even some shouts from Democrats, I guess, in support during the speech. Ken, I'll go right back to you. What do you think both of what President Biden had to say? Was it significant? But secondly, at about the response that there was, at least within the chamber?
Well, we've lost all modicum of civility. I mean, this is going on for the last 20 years, calling some speaker a liar in the Senate. It's just in the House of Representatives. It's irresponsible. I thought Joe Biden, first of all, did a great job. And he did a great job in large part to Marjorie Taylor Greene calling him a liar, because his recovery is what made him look that he was present, he was aware, he was cognizant, he was communicative, all the things that people are saying he's too old to be. Now, the bad part of that is that he's really kind of given more credibility to launch a presidential run, which I prefer him not to do. So Marjorie Taylor Greene helped Joe Biden and may have hurt the Democrats at the same time. And by the way, Marjorie Taylor Greene looked like Cruella de Vil. I'm not sure that was a very good look, and assume it was bad behavior.
Okay, Ray.
Well, I think it's sad. The new standard is he looked cognitive standing at the podium. That's a sad standard for America. Look, I don't watch the State of the Union anymore. When I was a younger man, I couldn't wait for it. I love politics. This has become nothing but a high school pep rally on both sides of the aisle. You had Nancy Pelosi tear up a speech. You had Joe Wilson holler liar at Barack Obama. You had Barack Obama scold the United States Supreme Court. And of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene and catcalls. These guys just act like they're little children at some little schoolyard fight or something, except none of them have the stones to throw a punch, of course. They just holler and yell. This is disgraceful, and they should be ashamed of themselves. But, unfortunately, we have no boundaries in politics anymore. As far as what Joe Biden had to say, he says what he always says. He lies. And that's what President Biden has become, one of America's biggest liars. Everybody seemed to care about it when it was Donald Trump. Nobody cares now. This Social Security and Medicare thing is an old tactic by Democrats. Rick Scott, the senator from Florida, proposed looking at these programs and potentially sunsetting them if they weren't reauthorized. Joe Biden did this very same thing 4 times on the floor of the United States Senate. He's a huge hypocrite. And they're not going to ever get rid of Social Security or Medicare. It would bring the country to blows. This is nuts.
Ray, there may be hypocrisy, but you can't use the word liar with Joe Biden when you supported Donald Trump as president. There was no bigger history than Donald.
I disagree with that. Biden lies because he says the word duh. I mean, we cared about it with Trump. We don't care about it now. I did support Trump. And if he is the nominee, I'll support him. But I've always said this, just nobody cared. Donald Trump lies too. Hell, they all lie. You can't get to be the president without being a liar.
So move on to the Republican response. Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, her first big public speech as a governor, and she launches a pretty harsh Republican attack on President Biden and the Democrats. Ray, this is clearly the first big salvo of the 2024 campaign, isn't it?
Sure, of course. But let's be reminded what the State of Union is. It's a constitutional obligation by the executive branch to tell the legislative branch the State of the Union. I agree with Sanders. I don't think he told the truth at the State of the Union. Our people are hurting. 29% of Americans right now are behind on their car payments. That is the highest rate since the Great Recession of 2008. We know inflation's up. We know gas and oil are up. We know Americans are struggling. And the president, I don't think, told the truth. She was right. Best line of the night. This is a battle between normal and crazy.
Yeah, but who's crazy, Ray? That's Marjorie Taylor.
Well, I think you can figure out who I think's crazy.
Well, I'd take Joe Biden over Marjorie Taylor Greene any day. And the problem with Sarah Huckabee is she talks about getting in new blood, which I agree with. Yeah. And then she supports Donald Trump, who's almost as old as Joe Biden. And so what is she talking about? She wants to support. And this is the thing, you guys, if you didn't learn from 2022, the American public is rejecting Donald J. Trump and rejecting the lies about the election being false. So if you want to get on that bandwagon, please do so, because you'll lose 2024. I hope you
I've never bought into the big steal. In fact, I said on November the 11th, November the 5th, 2020, that I believe Joe Biden was the duly elected president without evidence otherwise, which never materialized. But the truth of the matter is the country is in chaos, the world is in chaos, and Joe Biden's the president.
He's done a pretty good job. I have to tell you, he's done a pretty
good.
I really think so.
Ask the working class of the country if they think that.
We got to move on to one final thing, which is, it looks like, speaking of presidents, that Nikki Haley is about to enter the race for president officially. Will she just get chewed up, Ken, by the Trump machine, or will she be a serious contender?
Well, actually, I don't think she will, because I think Donald Trump underestimates her, and I think he underestimates most women, but I don't think he sees her as a viable candidate. And she is. She's young. She's intelligent. She's got the personality that I don't think Ron DeSantis has. I think she's a formidable candidate. I think it's smart they nominate her. She may be running for vice president instead of president, but I think she'd be a very formidable candidate. And I hope Donald Trump does attack her, and I hope she doesn't make any headway.
Okay. Ray, briefly, your assessment.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously, he's gone after DeSantis pretty hard. He may not go after Haley because he may not see her as a real threat. I just wish Trump would talk about the greatness of the first 3 years of the administration and stop talking about people. We don't need this anymore in the country. Very divisive. Things were pretty good in this country for the first 3 years of administration pre-pandemic. That's what he should be talking about. Nikki Haley's a great woman. She did a great job as the ambassador to the UN, as well as the governor of South Carolina. I don't think this is her time, but it may be in the future.
All right. Thank you both very much. A lot will be happening in the coming weeks. We'll be back next week with Political Brew. News Center Maine continues right after this.